My name is Chancellor Kenneth Dionsico, also known as the best George Harrison impersonator you have ever seen. And today we will be talking about the Beatles' influence on rock and roll. Few rock and roll icons have been as impactful as the Beatles. From their early influence to their massive impact on music history, today we will break down how four blokes from Liverpool combined their often clashing personalities to change rock and roll forever in less than a decade. Let's rock on. Before the Beatles became household names, they were just a group of teenagers that were obsessed with rock and roll. Artists like Chuck Berry and Little Richard shaped their sound in their first guitar riffs as well as their stage performance. But one of their biggest influences? Buddy Holly. Not only did he inspire their harmonies, but his band, the Crickets, gave the Beatles their idea for their insect-inspired band name, as well as John Lennon's punniness for beat in the Beatles. And let's not forget the king of rock, Elvis Presley. He helped show the world that music could be more than just sound. It was a full-on performance. The Beatles took that charisma and made it into their own. After being discovered by Brian Epstein in a cavern club in Liverpool, no relation, the Beatles were finally able to get the support of a label to push their music out to the masses. Fast forward to 1964, the Beatles arrive in America, and that's where everything changes. They played on the Ed Sullivan Show to 73 million viewers, and just like that, Beatlemania took over the US.
Live from New York, the Ed Sullivan Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something. I think you'll understand. You tell that I'm kissing the lips I'm on a hill, but I never heard them ringing. No, I never heard them at all till there was.
The Beatles weren't just another rock band. They were one of the first to truly take over the world stage. Their melodies, harmonies, and electric energy captivated audience and became an instant sensation.
I love the Beatles for them, and I'll always love them. Even when I'm 105 and an old grandmother, I'll love them. And Paul McCartney, if you are listening. Adrienne from Brooklyn loves you with all her heart.
At first, the Beatles were known for their catchy poppy hits, such as I Want to Hold Your Hand and A Hard Day's Night. But by the mid-60s, they were breaking every rule in the book of music. With Rubber Soul and Revolver, they introduced new instruments, like the sitar on Norwegian Wood, and psychedelic effects on Tomorrow Never Knows, which would later be expanded on in one of my personal favorite albums, The Magic Mystery Tour. Then came Sgt. Pepper's Heart Club Band, becoming one of the first concept albums ever, proving that you couldn't put the Beatles in a box. Instead of just recording singles, the Beatles created an album meant to be listened to in a full experience. I remember hearing stories of my dad of him in a clear mindset, listening to the Beatles with a record start to finish, and it was a magical experience. And they did it using techniques no one had ever even heard before, like layered vocals, orchestra arrangements, and even backward tapes. Using these revolutionary production techniques, the Beatles were able to dominate the charts during their 7-year tenure. And their influence can still be seen in artists' production today, such as Queen. Queen learned how to push creative boundaries while still maintaining that anthem-like energy to all of their live performances. How about Nirvana's iconic melodies? This was also inspired by John Lennon's songwriting. Kurt Cobain was an avid fan of John Lennon.
You know, ever since I got my first Beatles record, I wanted to play drums in a band. I wanted to have the adoration of John Lennon, but have the anonymity of Ringo Starr, you know? I didn't want to be the front man. I just wanted to be back there, but, you know, be a rock and roll star at the same time.
And how about another artist that lives across the pond? Let's talk about Oasis. Well, they practically worshipped the Beatles. And even artists today, such as Dua Lipa, have cited their influence from the Beatles. In the way we listen to music today and every day, here, there, and everywhere, the Beatles' influence is still seen in today's music. So that brings up the highly debated question: who's the most influential artist in rock and roll? If we're talking about impact, it's gotta be the Beatles. They changed the way the music is written, recorded, and experienced. They didn't just ride the wave of rock and roll, they made their own wave. But what do you think? Reply to this video with who you think the most impactful artist in rock and roll is.